It's time to talk about the very worst comic books this week. Many of you will be expecting Doc. Unfortunately, Doc is under the weather. He's recuperating right now, so I had to bring in a ringer to replace him. Most of you will know Drew from Comics Aficionados or Best of the Week, and you might think he's not salty enough. He doesn't hate comic books like Doc does. Maybe he can't bring the heat. I have it from a source that Drew is going to be able to bring straight fire on some terrible comic books. This week, we're going to talk about Giant Size X-Men Thunderbird, as well as Nubia Coronation Special. How you doing, Drew?
I was doing well until I read these again, because at Comics Elite on our YouTube channel, Comics Elite, we review the best and the worst. So reading these once was bad enough. Reading them twice, Doc, you better legit be sick. You better legit be out. That's all I got to say.
I didn't say to read them twice. That's on you, sir.
That is very
So
true.
I'm going to say that Giant Size X-Men Thunderbird and Nubia Coronation Special didn't make your top 10 this week, that they might have made the bottom 10.
They absolutely did, especially Giant Size X-Men Thunderbird. I remember reading the X-Men, the Uncanny X-Men run, and learning about Thunderbird, John Proudstar, that way. He only made it through 3 issues, effectively. He died a hero's death, which was great. And then we get this.
They certainly do reference him dying in the early days of Uncanny X-Men and Chris Claremont's run. Obviously introduced in Giant Size X-Men, the original one. Giant Size X-Men Thunderbird, Nyla Rose, who was a wrestler for AEW Wrestling, the first trans woman wrestler in a major wrestling promotion. Steve Orlando, I guess, would be the professional writer, as well as David Cutler on art. This is not a very good comic book. In fact, I would say this is horrendous. There are maybe 2 pages where the story they're trying to tell works. But for the most part, when you start out a comic book, you just throw away everything we knew about the character immediately and just insert whatever character, I guess, Nyla Rose and Steve Orlando wished John Proudstar was. Oppressed and hated everybody that he had come into contact with. And there's just so much hate and vitriol in the opening of this comic book. And there's so many terrible racist tropes, and every single white character in here mistreats Native Americans and whatnot. And it's just, if you have that much hate in your heart, I don't know why you're writing comic books.
You said it perfectly. You summed it up in one word: hate. This whole comic is hate all the way through. I can't believe Steve Orlando, this writer, and the editorial staff thought this was a great idea. Everyone's going to be on board with this. It's going to be like a go get 'em. I am legit shocked, and I was pissed reading this, because morality is lost in this comic. Morality does not exist in this book.
John Proudstar, who had explained who he was.
Yes.
He's kind of a loner. He was an Apache warrior. He was obviously also a mutant. So there are times when this comic book tries to tackle that conflict within himself. And in those times, it's kind of okay. The only time I think it really works is when John Proudstar is kind of thinking about being resurrected and coming back to a world that forgot him and what that means for him. And that part was intriguing, but they never expand upon that at all, because they're so preoccupied with the hate, the way that apparently everyone in this universe is mistreated. This reservation full of apparently Native Americans with massive superpowers that do not defend themselves at all at any time. That's why a lot of times when you try to insert these kind of ideas or story tropes into like an X-Men, the fact that they're very powerful makes it hard for me to believe that you could just go into their town, buy apparently the X gene out of the tribe, and then round up the locals.
Anyone can just roll up in there, arrest whomever they want, take what they want, regardless of the tribe, quote unquote, selling for experimentation. We have John Proudstar, effectively, it comes out of nowhere, destroys an entire sheriff's department, killing, I mean, I won't say killing, but like literally almost killing sheriffs, smashing their heads in, destroying the building, flinging vehicles around in the building. There's a brief, minor sentence set up to it, but from an unreliable character that he just takes as gospel, and as a teenager at that, which is insane. He causes all this destruction, and then it ends with him just sitting around drinking with his grandmother. Like,
yeah, there's no repercussions for destroying the police department.
Nothing.
But he was provoked because they called him mutie, and I think there was some derogatory terms, like calling him deep res or something like that. I guess there's names, I guess, that are called towards Native Americans.
Which, as we all know, warrants destroying a police department and killing police officers.
Well, I guess they were accomplices in rounding up the elders in the tribe.
Which we never see. We never see. We're told that, allegedly. We don't know.
Well, they're in the jail. I get what you're saying.
Yes, yes.
He wasn't exactly, he was provoked a little bit, but in the military, the law of proportionality that you kind of adhere to where if someone shoots one of your soldiers, you don't nuke an entire country.
No.
Like the response has to be proportional to the provocation. That is certainly not something that holds back Nyla Rose or Steve Orlando in this comic book.
Not at all. I really don't want anyone to buy this. How can we jump from, sputtering out phrases to automatically destroying property?
I mean, the character being resurrected automatically doesn't make sense because when you look at the timeline of House of X and Powers of 10 and when the backups happen or whatever, he's already dead. Yes. Now, I know he did come back for Chaos War and maybe one other thing back in the day.
Yeah.
But those are like different weird versions of the character. I don't even think that he should be able to come back. But if you are interested in John Proudstar Thunderbird, the character is in X-Men Red #1, I believe. And there he's kind of interesting. At least that's a somewhat faithful adaptation or interpretation. This is just weird, hateful fanfic about Thunderbird, John Proudstar, and whatever abuse that people would like to pile on him that it's clear never actually had to happen to the character until Nyla Rose and Steve Orlando imagined it.
John Proudstar, to me, died in X-Men 95, issue 95. That was when he died. He had a brother, James Proudstar. In Ed Brubaker's Uncanny X-Men run, he was a legit badass in that run. I think Billy Tan was doing the art, or Philip Tan. One of the Tans was doing it. And the story was amazing. I think The Rise and Fall of the Shi'ar Empire, terrific. And you really see James living up to his brother's legacy, trying to fulfill his shoes, living out and trying to get out from his shadow. It is an amazing stuff. And John should have just stayed dead. This is a shame, and shame on Marvel, shame on Steve Orlando, and all the creators involved with this. This is just wrong.
Absolutely terrible comic book, and I'm shocked that they're actually charging people to read this kind of terrible fanfic. Let's move over to some even worse. Well, I don't know if it's worse. Just as bad fanfic. It's bad in its own unique way. Nubia Coronation Special, Vita Ayala, Stephanie Williams. Obviously, they were part of the writing team for Trial of the Amazons, which was awful. This is a direct follow-up to that, and there are about 9 or 10 artists on it. So right away, the art is terribly uneven throughout the entire comic book. There are a couple artists that stand out as being pretty good. Most of them stand out as being very bad across the story. So you have the one main story where the character is getting ready for the coronation, and then you have 3 little mini stories that happen in the middle of it. And of course, Nubia is not from Themyscira. Wasn't born at Amazon, so she grew up like a princess in Africa or something like that, riding lions and shit.
They're all wearing these funny pink hats. They all look like they're like the funny hats that the bears would wear, riding in little cars in the circus. It looks ridiculous. It looks stupid. It's one of those things that you could tell no one in the art department thought this out. One thing I couldn't get over is how quickly Nubia had moved on from being with Hippolyta, dying, because she was in a relationship with Hippolyta in Trial of the Amazons' very first issue, and now she's apparently already in love with someone else. So I guess this is supposed to show us how emotionally immature she is, just willing to jump in from one relationship to another.
Yeah, it's good to be the queen.
Apparently, yeah. And I guess you can be a queen of a nation when you weren't even born there, which is even more interesting. I'm trying to wrap my brain around that. Doesn't make sense.
I'm trying to wrap my brain around why this comic book exists and why DC Comics continue to throw money away and actual physical resources to make this absolute garbage. Trees died so this fucking comic book could be printed and not sold in comic book shops.
It's a double-sized comic too, at that, and which is even more ridiculous. And like you said, this is one of the few times I'm feel very sad for the trees involved for this comic, and they really truly suffered the most. For this, I called it. This is the Nubia validation special. This is all this is, and we have another scene involving a police station with Nubia.
Oh yes. This is one of the reasons. It's like you want to do a grounded story that's grounded in all the terrible things that are happening in our world and stuff like that, but you're not thinking about the character.
No.
Nubia is a fierce warrior that is essentially a superhero that has the power of Wonder Woman. The idea that she's put into a jail and then has to endure all the racism that everyone else in the world has to do and would sit there and take it is absolutely ridiculous. But that's the only way that a writer like a Vita Ayala or Stephanie Williams can see Nubia. Only that she's a black character, not that she's a hero, not that she's an Amazon. But if she's a black character, she has to be mistreated and misjudged and treated poorly and put into jail for under false pretenses and stuff like that. If you're Nyla Rose or you're Steve Orlando, you can't think of John Proudstar as this phenomenal Apache warrior that happened to also be a mutant that was kind of a loner, but when push came to shove, he died like a hero because that's who he was. He can only be a Native American character that was just beat on and mistreated by white people his entire life. You're not thinking about the characters and what they represent and the worlds that they would be in if they actually did exist. So it just comes off as so fucking heavy-handed. And it's just, what is happening here?
It's all emotional manipulation by the writers and the creators to persuade someone into proving that they're justified in their actions with emotions. A lot of people are unfortunately persuaded emotionally and don't think critically about this stuff, which is sad. Oh, and spoiler alert, Martian Manhunter is in this. And let me tell you, this is not Martian Manhunter. This is the Bizarro version of him, where apparently he's telling Nubia that both he and Nubia are victims and a part of the system who are wrongfully imprisoned. And he wants to remake the world, but the right way. It's just, there's so many grandstanding speeches and diatribes that it just makes your head explode halfway through this comic. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, anybody that makes it further than halfway through this comic book and wasn't making a YouTube channel, I don't know what you were thinking.
We get Amazons in space ripping off Ta-Nehisi Coates. Yeah, like you couldn't even do it something original. You had to rip off Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Panther run. Congratulations.
And the art in that part in particular just was so weird. I was like, this looks bad. And then they went really cheap. There are no backgrounds. It looked like the person had 3 days to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guarantee it was all 3D models, like lazy. This whole comic was just lazy, heavy-handed, dumb schlock. This is just...
What you're saying is it was a follow-up to Trial of the Amazons, because it certainly feels in spirit of what that comic book was, which is something that was completely unreadable and needs to be discarded at the earliest. But we do get the big reveal at the end after she gets baptized and accepts everyone in the Themyscira to see her coronation because it's so fucking important, of course. Diana Prince, Wonder Woman, sniffs her ass and tells everyone that she's the greatest queen of all times, even though her mother's, not even fucking dead and buried yet. It's got to be all about Nubia. And then everyone gets to show up, and it was so stupid. You got these Amazons; these are like the greatest female warriors in all of DC Comics, and they're like checking fucking IDs to get in here, doing the most mundane work in the world. Could you make these superheroes feel any less important?
All I gotta say is, Trial of the Amazons, when that opened up, first or second issue, when you get the death, Queen Nubia, the most brilliant, most stunningest, most bravest, smartest queen ever, says not to use the lasso of truth. You are an idiot. No, you are an idiot. You do not deserve to be queen by simply saying no. I'm sorry.
And the worst part, as I was alluding to earlier, is that this is leading into Nubia, Queen of the Amazons, #1. Another comic book that no one asked for, no one will buy. How much money and resources can you waste on this writing duo and this character that is essentially permanently damaged because of what Vita Ayala and Stephanie Williams have done to Nubia? It's Nubia the Amazons was awful. Trial of the Amazons is bad. Nubia Coronation Special is probably worse. And Nubia Queen of the Amazons will be even worse. The problem is that it's just Nubia the Validation Special, but it's going on for like 2 fucking years.
Nubia the Validation Special. And look, I'm a writer as well. All right. I'm writing Born of Blood about Princess Giaris becoming queen. Now, Gabriel Hernandez will back me on this. You read it, you're seeing a woman who has to earn the right to be where she's at. She has to earn her place, which is, much a stark contrast compared to this piece of crap. I'm sorry, I'm watching my language. I'm not Doc. I'm watching my language here.
No reason to.
This piece of shit. I mean, it is a piece of shit. I'm sorry. This is. And it really makes me feel better about being a writer. And it really, reading bad comics like this makes me want to write better comics like Born of Blood. It really makes me want to be a better writer and show these guys, this is how you do it right. I'm calling my shot. Look, my comic is better than this, any of this crap from DC any day of the week. And it's going to be, Born of Blood will be better than anything coming out with Nubia, queen of the bestest ever, coming out. Look, it's going to be terrible. I guarantee it.
Vita Ayala, Stephanie Williams weren't the only reason Trial of the Amazon sucked. The entire writing team on that, with Michael Conrad, Becky Cloonan, who else is on there? I think, Joelle Jones. It fell apart. This was the first big Wonder Woman event in like a decade or two, and they dropped the ball spectacularly. This is one of the worst stories of 2022. I'll be shocked if it doesn't end up number one on my worst comic story of the year.